Good morning to all of you tuning in. This is the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you this amazing content. We've got a robust show. Former Congresswoman Marie Newman is going to be joining us in just a minute. We're going to be talking the Chicago ICE raids, and her and I have both been out there facing these ICE fascists directly, and we're seeing firsthand how they continue to escalate violence. This last week, they shot at Pastor Robert Black in the head. They shot him in the head after pepper spraying him in the face. They shot him in the head, a sniper on the roof. He's okay, but he is now filing a lawsuit. And I just need to point out that for as much as this administration talks about how Christianity is under attack, this is a literal Christian pastor peacefully protesting these fascists, and in response to his peaceful protest, living biblical Christ-like values, he gets shot by these fascists. And not a word of outrage or protest from the Trump regime. Not a single person in the Trump regime has said, hey, maybe it's a bad idea to shoot Christian pastors in the head. No, they are continuing to demonize him, demonize all of us who are out there, calling us violent righters, when in reality, we have not raised a single act of violence, not so much as a rock thrown, let alone something violent like a gun. The DHS put out a report last week that 10 cars ambushed an ICE vehicle. The video shows none of that sort happened. In fact, the one person that they did accuse of ramming a DHS vehicle, it turned out that the DHS officer or ICE officer opened fire at her first, shot her 7 times. She got to the hospital, they arrested her, and now they released her. She's a US citizen, they had nothing on her. And the other 10 cars that allegedly attacked this ICE vehicle, 0 arrests, not a single one. Just making the claim that 10 cars had ambushed them like it was some kind of a coordinated attack out of a movie. You know, there's that scene in Captain America where, I think it's Captain America, where they all attack Nick Fury with 10 cars and open fire at him and he escapes. That's what I'm envisioning. But no, the video shows they're just kind of driving along and then they taunt her, fire at her, and she drives away. That's basically it. These people are trying so hard to be victims. It is insufferable. It is ridiculous. Do not believe a single word that comes out of their press releases. And what's infuriating to me even more is that corporate media is just capitulating. They're just becoming stenographers and just repeating over and over again what is being said. So when Marie comes out in a little bit, we'll talk about that in more detail because it's important that we understand what's happening on the ground. The national media narrative is just repeating what these ICE fascists are saying. We need to make sure you guys understand what's happening on the ground because what's happening in Chicago will happen in Portland, in New York City after Zohran Mamdani becomes elected mayor. It's going to be a model deployed to every single city in the country. And it's important that you guys understand what is happening, how we are resisting. And there are ways that we are resisting and that are effective that you can employ as well. I want to start the show by talking a little bit about corporate media. Last week, I attended an event in Washington, D.C. This was an event designed to frame our proper messaging so we can win back the narrative. On the left, we keep losing the narrative. People say Democrats are terrible messengers, and the goal here was to say, how do we become more effective messengers? I was on a panel with other amazing folks who've built up massive platforms of millions of followers on social media on the left, and who are clearly effective at what they do. Other panelists throughout the day included U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen, who has been just a beacon of justice, an icon, condemning everything the Trump regime is doing, standing firm against the genocide in Gaza, demanding health care as a human right. I mean, he is what's right with politics today, by the way. Chris Van Hollen, Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland. I know I'm critical of a lot of politicians. Senator Van Hollen is the one who gets it right. You may remember that when Kilmar Abrego Garcia was abducted and sent to an El Salvador concentration camp, effectively a torture camp, Senator Van Hollen is the one who went down there and demanded his release and got him released. Senator Van Hollen is the one who went to Egypt, went to the Rafah border, and reported on the destruction of Rafah city, demonstrating that what Israel is doing is committing genocide. So this is a man of integrity. He was there. Mehdi Hassan, founder of Zateo, was there. U.S. Congresswoman Latifah Simon from California was there, who I didn't realize is the only member of Congress who is legally blind. An African-American leader, scholar, activist, just a brilliant person. I can't remember the name of the leader. It'll come to me in a minute. But the woman who founded Patriotic Millionaires, demanding higher taxes on the super wealthy in this country. So some amazing thought leaders in this space. Oh, Graham Plattner was there. Senator Graham Plattner was there. You heard my interview with him last week. And on the panel that I sat on, we talked about the importance of messaging. And one journalist who was there, a corporate journalist from The Atlantic, a guy named Jonathan Chait. Jonathan Chait's in the audience. And afterwards, he writes a hit piece targeting me and the other panelists there. And I want to respond to some of the ridiculous claims that he made in this hit piece because it exemplifies just how broken our media infrastructure actually is. Jonathan Chait is the kind of guy who's built a career on being on the wrong side of history. And when he directed this propaganda towards me, it reminded me how people like Chait have been complicit in the unraveling of our democracy, the erosion of global peace, and the rise of fascist autocracy. And rather than showing even the slightest bit of humility to pause and to listen and to learn from those who are doing the real work on the ground, people like Chait continue to pontificate from the safety of their columns. As long as it gets them more clicks, more book deals, more self-congratulation, anything related to truth or nuance or integrity just goes out the window. It's the first casualty of this situation. And so I want to talk about this because these so-called thought leaders have caused incalculable harm to our public discourse, to our collective moral compasses. They've literally distorted reality. And what I mean by that is they're serving the powerful, they're disguising propaganda as journalism, they've gaslit the public into submission, into thinking that they are the sole gatekeepers of what's true. And it's long past time we held them accountable, not through just mere outrage, but through a rigorous intellectual dismantling of their hypocrisy. Jonathan Chait puts out a piece called Democrats Still Have No Idea What Went Wrong. This is a lie. We know exactly what went wrong. He goes on to say that the progressive left makes its case for refusing to compromise with the electorate. Now this I found fascinating because the progressive left will tell you that our positions are not to demand the electorate come to us. They're actually reflective of what the electorate is. So for as much as he claims that the progressive left is making his case to refuse to compromise with the electorate, he doesn't actually name a single issue that we're refusing to compromise on. Is it giving up on universal health care that more than 70% of Americans want? Why would we compromise on that? The majority of Americans want it. What about ending the genocide in Gaza, which more than 92% of Democrats want? What is there to compromise on? How about protecting abortion access, which more than 96% of Democrats want? So I want to break this down into two parts because I need you to understand that his attacks on me, this is not a personal ego thing for me. I want to be very clear about that because if it was just some random guy who attacked me, I don't care. I get death threats. I get hundreds, if not thousands of comments a week, probably thousands a week of people attacking me. I don't go out chasing after every single rabbit hole. It's a waste of my time. The reason why I'm addressing Jonathan Chait is because he's not some ordinary random troll. This is a man with a massive platform who for decades has disinformed the public. And I hope as you're watching this, you subscribe to me on YouTube, you subscribe to my Substack, and cancel your subscriptions to these corporate media outlets who continue to gaslight us. And by the way, there's some phenomenal places you should be subscribing to. ProPublica, The Appeal, the Mississippi Free Press, the Equal Justice Initiative. These are all amazing examples of how journalism is done. So part one really talks about his history of disinformation. Part two, then I go into the specific allegations against me. And the thing is, if Jonathan Chait is good at one thing, it's being on the wrong side of history on every major issue and doing so with deadly consequences. And this is not hyperbole. For example, in 2003, Chait ignored all the evidence and proudly supported the illegal invasion of Iraq. Those of you who are old enough to remember this know that George Bush offered no evidence for the claims of, weapons of mass destruction coming to destroy us. Bush even went further and said that this was a crusade that God told him to wage. That is unhinged. And my God, I wish Democrats and people on the left had the courage to say, this is fascism. What you're talking about is insane. But no, Jonathan Chait greased the wheels of fascism. He greased the wheels of this invasion, even though millions of Americans marched in the streets opposing this Bush doctrine of preemptive attack. Journalists like Chait failed to hold power accountable. Instead, like I said, he greased the wheels. And the horrific atrocity that Chait championed destroyed Iraq, killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, if not millions by some count, killed thousands of American soldiers, wasted trillions upon trillions of dollars, all built on a lie. We could have had universal health care. Instead, we got a destroyed Iraq and wealthy defense contractors. A lie that Jonathan Chait shamelessly supported. But he's not done yet. It gets even worse somehow. In 2016, as every person committed to justice warned that Donald Trump would be terrible for America, that he would be a terrible, terrible consequence for America, what did Jonathan Chait do? He wrote an article. He wrote an article titled, "Liberals Should Support a Trump Nomination," in which he proclaimed that the GOP is a machine that harnesses ethno-nationalistic fear. A Trump nomination might upend his party. So this man saw the GOP being a racist party and said, you know what? Trump could hopefully end that racism. Like, are you insane? He goes on to say, a Trump presidency would probably wind up doing less harm to the country than a Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz presidency. It might even possibly do some good. Trump is only playing a character. The truly dangerous Republicans are the ones who believe their own dialogue. It is truly fascinating that Chait was wrong on literally everything. But what's even worse is that none of what Trump has done since becoming president is a surprise. None of it. Chait wrote that article after Trump was credibly accused of sexually abusing dozens of women, after his history of racism against black and brown people, after his anti-Semitic comments and fraternizing with white supremacists, after his plan to, he announced his plan to ban Muslim immigrants, after he announced his proposal to have a registry to track American Muslims, similar to how Jews were tracked in Nazi Germany. Knowing all this, Jonathan Chait decided that Trump might even do some good to America. And so as you watch these ICE fascists take down 79-year-old US citizens, as you watch the US military occupy our cities, farmers lose everything they've worked for due to tariffs, measles outbreaks in South Carolina and in Texas, South Korean workers arbitrarily arrested and tortured, billions lost in revenue, please know that Jonathan Chait predicted and argued that Trump would be good for America. And even now we're seeing the exact same absurdity in 2025. His position on Israel and genocide is just an absolute nightmare. First, let me give him one piece of credit where due. He rightly rejects the claim that criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. And I give him credit because that is right. Criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic, and he's on the right side of history there. Everybody gets one. But that makes his stance on genocide that much more confusing because he refuses to condemn the genocide. Despite near unanimous verdicts from global genocide scholars, including numerous Israeli Jewish scholars like Omar Bartov of Brown University, Norm Finkelstein, the list goes on, including numerous Jewish human rights organizations like B'Tselem. Amnesty International leads a global list of human rights organizations. The ICC, the ICJ, the United Nations, hundreds of organizations all agree Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinian people. The most horrific genocide in our current time right now, which is sad because there's several. Chait has decided to ignore this genocide altogether. And this is who this man is attacking me and progressives. A man who supported the illegal invasion of Iraq, a man who, while they killed hundreds of thousands of people, a man who argued that Donald Trump would be good for America, and a man who now sits silent on genocide while it's being broadcast on our phones. This is who he is. And like I said, if he was just some ordinary person, it wouldn't matter. I wouldn't care. But he's not an ordinary person. This is a man with a major platform. It wouldn't matter if he was an ordinary person. Because if he had the judgment of a dumb CEO at a Coldplay concert, hey, you're ruining your own life, not ruining my life. But he considers himself a journalist, and he has spent the last 3 decades working in major legacy media to that effect. He has major platforms. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Slate, the New Republic, and now most recently the Atlantic, where he turned his attacks towards me and progressives. And so I write this not for him, because he's thriving on this attention. I'm writing it for you, the person listening, because I believe my fellow Americans deserve honesty and intellectual rigor on these issues that shape our lives. So rather than relying on people who mistake cynicism for insight, you can rely on trusted people grounded in evidence and integrity. And so at this event, we're talking about the importance of progressive values. And I need to provide this context because Branko Marcetic, a writer for the Jacobin, posted this. It was an excellent, a very quick takedown of Chait's hypocrisy, where he says that last August, Jonathan Chait said that Harris needs to do everything possible to show that she's a centrist and upset progressives. And he links Chait's article saying exactly that. He's quoting him. And then Marcetic continues and he says, and then 2 months later, Chait said that that's exactly what she's doing and that it's working. And then he shares a Chait article where the headline is, "Stop complaining, the centrism is working." And then Marcetic concludes his point. He says, and then Kamala Harris lost. So now Chait has to pretend the opposite is true. And then he provides Chait's article that progressives are no longer control the party and they know it. And so to summarize what Marcetic is saying, he points out that last year Chait argued, and he doubled down, that the Democratic Party was firmly centrist and was winning on centrism. And now, because Harris lost on that centrist platform, he's blaming progressives for the loss. That it's because she was too progressive. This is insane. What he's saying is that if Harris had won, it would have been due to centrism, but because she lost, it's because she was too progressive. This doublespeak is classic Jonathan Chait, and it permeates his attacks on me. So he begins this piece by saying that on a recent panel of progressive activists analyzing what went wrong in 2024, the authored activist and failed political candidate Qasim Rashid spoke with confidence about the way forward for the Democratic Party. Now, I laugh, I chuckled at that one because look, to be honest, to be called a failed political candidate from someone who's never run for office and someone who thinks that Donald Trump is good for America, that's something I take as a compliment. But I digress. He continues. He goes, the problem, Rashid insisted, was not that Democrats had strayed too far from public opinion, but that the party had grown too solicitous of it. Saying the right thing timidly, he proclaimed, is less effective than saying the wrong thing loudly. The thing is that Jonathan Chait just lied. He just flat out lied. I argue literally the opposite. I said that the Democratic Party has strayed too far from public opinion. I pointed out that, for example, 77% of Democrats wanted Biden and then Harris to stop funding Netanyahu, and the party refused. Instead, they leaned into centrism. And this hurt Harris at the polls, a fact that she has conceded. In fact, an IMEU poll found that of the millions of voters who voted for Biden but stayed home for Harris, the number one reason they gave for staying home, 29%, which is even more than those who cited the economy, 24%, the number one reason why they stayed home was due to the party's refusal to listen to them on Gaza. That's the election right there, folks. That's the election, and that's the point that I was making. I pointed out that 70% of Democrats want universal health care, including nearly 60% of all Americans, and the party refused, instead leaning into centrism and taking funding from the very same corrupt corporations like United Health that are exacerbating the health crisis. I pointed out that 90% of Democrats want corporate money out of politics, yet Democratic politicians continue to take money from these corporations. And my point about saying things timidly versus loudly had nothing to do with that point. I was quoting Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton said that when people are uncertain, they'd rather have leaders who are strong and wrong rather than right and weak. And I said that Trump is strong and wrong, and Democrats are right and weak, and that's the problem, and that instead, how we convey a message matters, and Democrats need to be loud and right. I point out that our base is starved for political candidates who are fighters and willing to do something more than write strongly worded letters. Thank you, Chuck Schumer. And it's that lack of fight why Democrats have a historic low in approval ratings. And the thing is, like, for as much as Chait slams progressives, he completely ignores that it was a centrist Democrats who got everything they wanted in the last 3 presidential elections, lost 2 of them to a fascist, lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the Supreme Court, and still refused to reflect that maybe, just maybe, trying to out MAGA is a failed strategy. But Chait continues. He says that Rashid's argument was anything but timid, and it certainly played well in the Washington, D.C. room, yet Rashid meant for this event to be more than just a pep talk among allies. His call for a confident, undiluted progressive platform is how you see people flip red seats blue. Yes, this is exactly what I said. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. The incalculable harm that people like Chait bring about by putting forth their opinions is extraordinarily damaging. People like him have never actually spoken to voters. So when they talk about what voters want, they have no idea what they're talking about. Chait has never run for office. I doubt he's never knocked a single door for any campaign. I've knocked more than 15,000 doors over the decades that I've run for office and volunteered. I've been volunteering for about 15 years for campaigns. I've knocked over 15,000 doors. And having knocked doors of people as far left as you can imagine and as far right as you can imagine, I can tell you I speak from experience. Chait and people like him speak from behind a computer screen. That's not how you understand what people want, not from the internet, from real life. Had Chait ever actually run a campaign or knocked on doors, he would know this fact, that what progressives want is in fact moderate in every respect and popular in every respect. And those are not contradictory positions. The second fact he would know is that what Chait and those like him are advocating for is not centrism, it's actually right-wing extremism. Consider these facts, and we're going to go to break in just a minute here and bring on Marie Newman to talk about what's happening here in Chicago. But just consider these facts. Racial justice is moderate. Democrats who are claiming that woke culture is hurting us are in fact selling out black people. That's extreme. It's indefensible. A living wage is moderate. Poverty is extreme. Democrats deflecting on passing a living wage that the majority of Americans want is indefensible, especially as wealth and income inequality are record highs. Treating LGBTQ Americans as human beings is moderate. Anti-trans hate is extreme. Democrats throwing trans people under the bus are committing an indefensible act, especially as voters reported that trans issues were their least concern in the 2024 election. It was a culture war that Democrats fought for no reason. All they had to do was say, these are human beings, let's move on to things that actually matter, that are going to affect your bottom line. Trans people aren't the reason why you don't have a job. It's because of this corrupt economy. Immigrants aren't why you don't have a job. It's because of a broken economic system. But Democrats refused to fight, spoke timidly and stupidly, and they lost that culture war. Affordable, high-quality healthcare is moderate. More than 70% of Americans demand it. Democrats don't support it unanimously, and it hurts us. Ending genocide is moderate. 92% of Americans, Democrats, want to stop arming Netanyahu. Democrats who keep voting to fund and arm Netanyahu, or the 30 who wrote a letter to Rubio objecting to Palestinian statehood, are extreme. It's indefensible. A humane immigration policy is moderate. Did you know that 79% of Americans right now believe immigration is good for our country? And Democrats are joining Republicans. 75 signed a letter to Trump praising ICE for mass deportations. Indefensible. I can go on, but the point is clear. None of these so-called progressive positions are extreme. They are literally the moderate and common sense view, and denying them is in fact right-wing extremism. We have the platforms to fight back, and we need to fight back. And that's why I ask you to subscribe, to support our advocacy, because this is how we build a better system where we can dismantle propaganda with receipts, with context, with moral clarity, where we can continue to speak truth to power, to hold politicians accountable, because this is not about flexing egos, it's about reclaiming truth as a public good. We must advance a narrative that involves trusting those who continue to get things right, because our currency is truth and not clicks. And so despite being the apparent failed politician that I am proud to speak that truth loudly and unapologetically while soberly sitting on the right side of history. All right, you're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're listening on Substack or watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and continue to help us speak truth to power. We're going to go to break, and when we come back from break, we are going to have former Congresswoman Marie Newman to discuss these ICE fascists and ICE raids happening here in Chicago and what you need to know for when this inevitably comes to your city. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban Review Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Always excited to welcome my good friend, former Congresswoman Marie Newman, to the show. Marie, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
You and I have been hanging out a lot lately, going to these ICE protests and kind of bearing witness firsthand. And what I was saying in the first part of the show before you joined was one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you is because, in many ways, Chicago is kind of a testing ground for what we know Trump wants to deploy nationally over the next three
Right.
years. And what I'm hoping we can convey to our viewers and listeners is kind of what we're seeing that's been effective and what folks can glean and learn. The
Yeah.
one that you and I attended most recently, about 200 people there, um, peaceful. Nobody was so much as throwing rocks, but the
Yeah.
narrative that Pam Bondi put out there was that these were violent rioters who were ambushing the attack. They made us look like, ogres in Lord of the Rings trying to like tear down the castle walls. Um, Talk a little bit about that. From a messaging standpoint, what can folks do on the ground to make sure that there's accurate reporting, that folks outside of the local city can understand what's happening, and that we can respond accordingly?
Well, I think everybody organically responded correctly, right? In Portland and here. And then it started in LA where people simply put out videos of how calm and peaceful it was, right? It just it was
Yeah.
remarkable and it made it makes Chicago look beautiful, Portland, LA, etc., right? So that was good. We need to do more of that at the protests. Do what our governor is saying is, see something, say something, film something, right? I keep repeating that. I had on my show last night, I had Ezra Levin, who's the co-executive director of Indivisible, and
Right.
he believes strongly, as you and I do, that the protests are working. It's bad optics for MAGA, the Republicans, and for Trump. And every time you show the exact opposite of what they're portraying it to be, it leaves a conflict in one's head and say, okay, what is really going on here? Um, I do think that the more we talk about it on shows like this and talk about how silly and juvenile and ridiculous the Trump administration is to send our troops, which we ask them to put them in harm's way on a regular basis and to put them in a place where they are not needed, it is beyond.
Well, one thing that I was inspired to see, the I don't know what the right title is, Governor General of the National Guard of Oregon. First
Yeah.
of all, a federal judge ruled that Trump cannot deploy the National Guard there, which I think is fantastic for a number of reasons. One, Kristi Noem tweeted out in 2024 numerous times that if President Biden deploys the National Guard, then it's unprecedented and unconstitutional attack on states' rights, and
Right.
they will sue. But now suddenly it's okay. But um, a federal judge ruled in favor of banning Trump. But what the governor of the National Guard said, whoever the general is for the National Guard, he said that look, if we are deployed, our responsibility is to protect the citizens, and we will protect them from ICE, which I
Yeah.
thought was fantastic because I think
Yeah.
that's ultimately, I'd be okay with that if they came out and stopped ICE from harassing and attacking and
Right.
dropping out of these Apache helicopters into apartment buildings. I'm definitely okay with that. I want to play a clip real quickly here. This is from Kristi Noem, and I want to get. I don't know if you've heard this clip yet, but I want to get your reaction, even if you have, because I think
Yeah.
this is hilarious. She's talking about what ICE and Border Patrol officers are facing in Chicago. It's a short 20-second clip. Take a listen.
Our ICE officer, and in fact, they don't even let our ICE officers and our Border Patrol officers use restrooms in facilities. Those men and women were telling us that they have to figure out even where they can go sit down for 5 minutes to have lunch or to use a restroom throughout their shift and their break. So they've made it a very difficult situation.
So, are you playing the world's smallest violin right now, Marie?
Well, it's just so ridiculous, right? And bravo on those, those restaurant owners and those shops that wouldn't let them in. That is their prerogative. And by the way, can we just harken back to 10 years ago when folks from their side, shop owners from their side, would not allow two gay men to have a cake from their store? So, gosh, it hurts when reality comes back and bites you in the buns, you know? So it's ridiculous.
It's so funny how free market capitalism is only a one-way street, apparently.
Yeah. Oh, no, it
Um,
is for
yeah,
them. I mean,
that's the argument.
constantly. It
I, I,
is,
I
it's
was
ridiculous.
I was trying to think of a way to say that maybe bathroom bills aren't such a bad idea anymore if this is the way that they're going to apply it. I mean, this is kind of how ridiculous these folks are. They're
Yeah.
playing the victim after literally terrorizing our communities. And you and I saw Pastor Black, one of the Christian
Ugh,
pastors out there,
yeah.
and now he's filed a lawsuit after
Good for
being,
him.
definitely good for him, after being pepper sprayed in the face and after being shot in the head by a sniper. He wasn't wearing a helmet. It was not a real bullet. It was, I think, a rubber bullet or something,
Right.
extremely
Right.
painful that way. He's okay medically, from what I understand. I mean, there's
Yeah.
trauma from that, but he's not. It's not fatal, obviously. But talk a bit about this, Marie, because everything we hear from this administration, and he's even signed some executive orders about the persecution of Christians in this country and how Christianity is being destroyed and distraught.
Yeah.
I tell you what, if this was a Muslim majority country and they shot a Christian pastor in the head, I would be at the forefront condemning that as
That's
horrific
right. That's right.
extremism, persecution, and violence against Christians.
Yeah.
What's happening here? What does this tell you about this regime that they are shooting Christian clergy in the head, pepper spraying them in the face, and not only not condemning it, but saying, we'll do more if you try to protest us again?
Well, what's interesting here is that faith leaders of every faith. I've seen imams at these protests. I've seen priests. I've seen rabbis. I have seen other faith leaders come out in droves to support peace, right? And so they're there to support peace. So the irony is that they are having hell brought upon them when they're just trying to strike peace, right? So I don't understand what ICE's objective is. I don't understand the objective. But let's all remember that these white Christian nationalists, which are really just white supremacists, have no
Yes.
interest in religion. They don't care about supporting. They don't have. They're not following doctrine. They're not following Jesus or any other faith designation. They are simply wanting this nation to be very white. If you listen to Stephen Miller, his grand plan is that we are going to get rid of all black and brown people and people that are not Christian. So that's inclusive of Jews, Hindu folks. Actually, he doesn't want any Catholics in the nation. Like it's real. Like
Yeah.
he's wanting everybody out, so that in fact he wants the nation to be at about 100 million people. I mean, he's said this in a white paper. He's said it on TV. So we know where this is all going, and it has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with their white nationalism.
And the irony is that he's Jewish himself.
Yeah.
And he has these, and his own cousins, his own uncles have called him out
Oh,
as a
yeah.
fascist.
Yeah.
And,
Vehemently. Yeah.
vehemently, and kudos to them, and I commend them for being so unapologetic about this. I posted this on social media, and MAGA came after me that, MAGA say we are a Christian nation, and we should have our laws based on the Bible. And I responded, if that's the case, in Leviticus, the Bible says, do not mistreat foreigners living in your country, but treat them as you treat your own citizens. Love
Yep.
foreigners as you love yourselves. I am your Lord God. So
Yep.
when do we give all
Yeah.
undocumented people citizenship? And then MAGAs came after me and said, no, 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 not that part of the Bible, and just making excuses why suddenly that Bible part doesn't apply anymore. The
Oh,
hypocrisy is revolting. You're exactly right. This is not religion. This is white supremacy. It's white
mm,
nationalism. It's exactly what it is. It's
yeah.
genocidal. It's eugenicist.
Yeah.
I have been extremely impressed with the conviction and courage shown by Mayor Brandon Johnson, signing an
Yeah.
executive order most recently banning ICE from city facilities. Talk a bit more, because I know you know him pretty well.
Yeah.
What's his game plan? What is he, how is he taking such a measured approach, but remaining strong and firm? When I talk about Democrats need to speak truth powerfully, I think
Yeah.
he's exemplifying that extremely well. What do you like about what you're seeing out of him, and what more do you want to see out of him?
Well, I think he's being incredibly clear. And let me start out at the macro level. All of our Illinois leadership, political leadership, locked arms and went to work right away when we were threatened. And they're staying together and they are supporting one another. So let's say bravo to all that because it doesn't always happen that way. I don't
Right,
think it happened in California exactly that
right,
way. They came together, but we were right out of the gate, right? Just
right.
firm and fast. And what, to your point, he is making all the right markers on this is that we are not going to put up with your nonsense. We will the police are there to protect people. They are not there to protect you. So our people come first, and he's making that very clear. He's making it clear that you are illegal. You're operating in an illegal fashion, as is JB. And so I think he's hitting all the right markers beautifully, and he's saying it with force. So to your point about how should Democrats be talking, I tell them this all the time. I'm coaching 6 candidates right now for Congress. It's like, be forceful. People are looking for
Yeah.
enthusiasm, passion, and intention, and being deliberate. So I think he's hitting all the right notes.
That point about deliberate, and fire. I was quoting Bill Clinton earlier, who said that when people are afraid or unsure, they would rather support a candidate who is strong but wrong over right and weak.
Which is
And
why Trump won, by the way. He
exactly why.
showed strength. He showed strength. And honestly, like all these people that are taking this very passive role, may not do well in this election. And I'm talking about our own Democrats.
Yeah,
When I was talking to Ezra Levin last night on my show, we were talking about, look, it is okay to push our own folks real hard, right?
yes,
And we have been, and to the point where I've had several members of Congress not be too happy with me. But
right.
look where we're at right now. We're winning the shutdown. We pushed hard. They're doing a good job of holding the line. So,
Right.
folks, I'm just telling you out there that listen to Qasim's show is you push your Democrats hard because you know what? We're getting the result that we need now. And there's going to be a lot more fights between now and 28, but this one we're winning.
We're winning because we're being consistent in that messaging, that we're going to be
Right.
unapologetic about this. And I think that's where JB Pritzker's been doing an effective job as well. I
Oh,
appreciated the
yeah.
fact that he said that if you want to, cut to my people, you have to go through me. I mean, it's such a
Yeah.
simple comment.
Yeah.
And if anyone has the power, wealth, and privilege to say that, it's someone like JB, and he's doing it. So again, and I say this as
Kudos.
someone, if
Yeah.
you've listened to the show, I've been critical of every politician out there, but I also give credit where due, and I think he's doing
Mhm.
an effective job in this space.
Agreed.
One of the things that Mayor Brandon Johnson has done that I'm really happy with is his ability to work with the Chicago police to get them on board here as well.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
all there's
yeah.
often been an adversarial relationship between the mayor and the PD, Chicago PD, and in this case, we're seeing them. In fact, they're doing such an effective job of protecting people that DHS is complaining that they're not supporting us. And Mayor Brandon Johnson's like, oh, I'm sorry. Do you think that they're federal,
They're
agents?
not.
No,
Yeah.
they serve the
Yeah.
city, and that is their priority. Marie, one of the questions I'm getting constantly, and I don't know if you are as well, but I'm getting at least, I don't know, a dozen emails a day or DMs a day from people saying, I've never protested before. I really want to go, but I'm hella scared.
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah. Yeah.
advice to folks who are frightened by what they're seeing or by what it could mean to go out there, something goes south? What's your guidance to them?
Well, I want to give kudos to the police and actually directly correlate that to the answer of your question.
Yeah,
So the police are protecting us. They're there to protect us, and that is their job. They are there to prevent anybody from getting hurt, right? But they're there to protect us. And as you and I witnessed, you saw me shake their hands as I was leaving, is that they were
right.
doing a great job of protecting the protesters, right?
Yeah,
Now, in some instances where these goons and thugs from ICE are shooting people with rubber bullets from the top of a building, for God's sakes,
absurd.
they're this cosplaying that they do constantly that I'm a GI Joe. Jesus Christ, excuse me,
It's absurd.
but like
Absurd. You're right.
it
It's
is
absurd.
absurd. But folks that want to protest, please get out there. There's 3 reasons why I encourage you. One, it works. So we've seen that we pushed our own Democratic leaders to shut down the government so that we can preserve health care. You did that. The protesters did that.
Right.
Secondly, we saw with ABC and Harvard, same thing. You guys did that. Protesters did that. We are now seeing that ICE recruitment is down 25%. You know
Wow.
why? they don't like having all of these protesters out there because it makes their job harder. And you know what worse, and you know what I'm going to say next is that they have to look in the mirror every
Yes.
morning and say, I am the devil that is going to break a mom and dad away from their kids. I am the devil and I have to go do the devil's work today, right? So that's why recruitment's down. So protests work, you are protected. And by the way, both Project 5051 and Indivisible have great guidelines on how to. So go to indivisible.org or Google 5051, and they give you great guidelines on how to stay protected. There's a whole system. But don't be afraid, folks, because that's what they want, by the way. I just want to say that one more time. They want us to be afraid. You
Yeah.
do not be afraid. By the way, we are out, the folks that are supporting Trump and this administration and all of those lunatics in his cabinet, and they are, let's be clear, we outnumber them by easily 3 to 1, folks, just
Yeah.
to be clear, three
Yeah.
to one. There's more
That's
of
exactly
us.
it.
We know how to comport ourselves because we're normal human beings that are well.
And that this point about protests working, Marie, is such an important point. You know,
It
the last
is.
time you and I went out there a few weeks ago, there were about 200 people protesting.
Yeah.
I've been able to go out since as well, and
Yeah.
we're going to go out together again. But
Yeah.
last time I went, there was about 800 people.
Yeah.
And so the numbers are growing. And you want to talk about how afraid ICE is. You know, I know people are afraid, but I need you to understand. It's like, you know, like when you approach a wild animal or like a snake, you know, the
Yeah.
thing is, it's more afraid of you than you are of
Mhm.
it. I think that adage applies here as well,
Yeah.
because it's ICE who is wearing face masks so they don't get identified. It's ICE who's putting up fences which are illegal so that they can't be approached. It's ICE who has snipers on the roof. It's ICE who is firing rubber bullets even at journalists. It's ICE who has helicopters and drones in the sky to monitor 24/7. It's ICE who forcibly moved us to a different location, which ended up
Yeah.
getting us even more protesters. They are scared out of their goddamn minds
That's right.
because they see people, black, white, brown,
Coming
Muslim,
together.
Christian, Jewish,
Yeah.
believer, non-believer, you know, rich, young, old, young, working together
Yeah.
exactly. And they know that their BS narrative that they're going after the violent criminals is a BS narrative. 93% of the people that ICE fascists have detained have zero violent criminal record whatsoever. I think
Yeah.
66% have no criminal record at all. And so the few who have a criminal record that they're detaining is like a speeding ticket
Right.
or public intoxication. I mean something arbitrary that didn't
Right.
hurt anyone.
DUI. Yeah.
A DUI. And so that narrative is falling apart. And what I tell
Yeah.
folks is that if you're afraid now, well, guess what? It's not going to get any less scary. And
No,
so, you know, I think it's Audre Lorde who said that you become brave by doing the things that require bravery. And this is
that's
one of
right.
those, you know, situations where, you know, find a buddy and go and have those conversations. So we've got about 5 minutes left.
Sure.
um, what more do you want to see out of governors across the state, Democratic governors and Democratic mayors and AGs?
Yeah.
What more do you think they can or should be doing right now that they haven't already started doing?
Well, there's other litigation that they can form, right? Depending on what the plan is. So let's say that in fact the hearing goes through today, and for some reason, I don't think it'll go this way, but for some reason they make a temporary decision, or they don't go all the way to say, Trump, you can't invade Illinois. There's other forms of litigation that Kwame can put together very quickly. In fact, they have that ready. I know they've been preparing for months for this, so they've had all of these different ABC situations all set up. So there's other litigation. I do think that the governors are all doing a really good job. So Governor Kotek in Oregon, and here JB Pritzker here in Illinois, they are using the press to let them know, I'm not afraid of you. So
Yeah.
you're a punk. What I do think, this is one thing that's controversial that I think they all should be doing, is that I think it was right when JB said we should be calling in the 25th Amendment. I think
Yes.
all the Democratic governors should be coming together and saying, you need to step down, sir,
Yeah.
and make
Agreed.
and humiliate him. So there's some other messaging tactics that I think would be powerful. The more we show first, by the way, folks, just to remind everybody, capitulation never works with a bully. It never ever.
Sure.
I'm a former anti-bullying expert. It never works. You don't have to start a fight, but don't back down from a fight. So now we're in this situation where and it's the law of physics, right? Is that for every action there has to be a reaction, and we must react appropriately. So with the same level of force, right? So messaging and force is important.
What are your thoughts on, and I'm going to be writing more about this, but on this view of soft secession, where
Yeah.
states can invoke their states' rights and say the federal government is, sure, we have supremacy clauses, which the federal
Yeah.
law trumps state law, but states are allowed to have a higher standard of protecting the rights of their citizens.
Right.
The supremacy clause just says that states cannot go lower than the federal standard, but it doesn't mean that they can't go higher than the federal standard. What about the argument that states make that, hey, the federal law is denying rights that our citizens deserve and demand,
Right.
and therefore we are going to withhold our tax revenue because most blue states are giver states. They give more in federal tax than they take
Right.
back, and say we are going to withhold our tax revenue until these laws are overturned because you're violating state sovereignty. It's an interesting argument to me as a lawyer, and it's one that has been used on some levels throughout history.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you think there's an
It,
application of it here?
well, Governor Abbott has been doing this for years, right? That he's claiming state rights and that he is in direct violation of many federal laws. So put that aside. I have some very good news for your listeners. 10 states are creating shadow institutional structures that will replicate the federal government should something dramatic happen. 10 blue states are doing that.
Right.
Illinois is among them, California, Oregon, New
Yeah.
York. So we are already soft seceding. I just want to be clear with everybody. You have some great governors out there that are already, in fact, if you want to know more, I have a full Substack on who's doing what, where, and how to soft secede. Now, finally, to your direct question about withholding taxes, I think that could be part of a separate action or part of a general strike that we do. And it
Yeah.
is feasible. And we would be within the law, by the way. That's interesting. And you'll have a different take on this. But from what I understand, it is within their right to withhold the taxes that are due to the federal government if, in fact, a series of check marks happen, right? So
Yeah.
these governors are prepared to withhold those taxes. And by the way, I say yay, go team fight.
I love it. Marie, we've done our last 30, 45 seconds. How can folks find you on social media and support your work? I will put in a plug. If you're watching this or listening to me on my Substack or YouTube, make sure you subscribe as a paying subscriber to Marie's work because it is powerful. She brings brilliant expertise as someone who served in Congress and who knows what's happening on the ground. A lot of stuff that corporate media won't talk about, she will unapologetically. But Marie,
Right.
please, the final minute is yours.
Well, thank you so much. You know what I like to do, folks, is I like to be a help desk, and I think Qasim does a great job with this. If you have questions about Congress, how government works, how politics and government work together, how it affects humans on an everyday basis, I'm your go-to on from a question standpoint. So send me your questions. I am on Substack.com. You can dump in Marie Newman and find me, or at Marie Newman at Marie Newman Studio on Substack. Either will get you there, and I'm on every major platform. So just dump in Marie Newman or former Congresswoman Marie Newman, and you find me. But love to hear from you, folks. One of my great joys of doing my Substack 3 times a week is that you ask me very interesting questions that I love to answer. So have at it and come and see me, and I'm glad to interact.
Marie Newman, former Congresswoman from Illinois. You've continued to be a brilliant thought leader and public servant in and out of office. And thank you for joining us today.
Oh, I have to make one more plug. I totally forget this. My partner's at WCPT. So WCPT is part of the Heartland Signal Network in 26 cities. Here in Chicago, it's WCPT 820 on the dial. I'm on at 9:15 every Sunday morning, and it's called At Your Risk. So love to see you there, folks.
Love it. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban View Channel 126. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Substack, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Congresswoman Marie Newman, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Review Channel 126, the most awesome show in the multiverse. That was former Congresswoman Marie Newman. And you heard the conversation we had about what's happening in Chicago and how you can stay informed and engaged. Look, I will say it again and again. We need messengers, not martyrs. So stay safe, have a plan, and make sure that you are going with folks that you know and trust. Thank you for your amazing support. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, whether you're on Substack or on YouTube, so we can continue to create this content. My friends, continue to speak truth to power. We are in a marathon, not a sprint. Take care of your mental health, take care of each other, and continue to do everything within your capacity, whether it's donate, volunteer, make phone calls, or march. Every single bit of it matters. You're listening to the Qasim Rashid Show here on Sirius XM Urban Channel 126. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Peace.